Welcome back, Camden Catholic. My honors kids, as I should say. I know it's been a little while since we've had a flip, but we gotta catch up a little bit. Okay. So, main thing we're talking about today is the role of the medieval Catholic Church. Now, the reason why I always feel that it's important to discuss these things is because not everybody's Catholic, right? Even though we're at a Catholic school, people that you know very well. For example, I'm not Catholic, and I wouldn't have known these things coming in. Okay. Before we get started, though, a couple of things to jot down, a couple of things to remember. Number one is do not mute me on this because there's a lot of extra stuff that I'm going to be saying. So make sure you're paying attention to that, all right? And then, big thing is, though, is remember that the Catholic Church was the home to the last remaining intelligence. And when we're talking about the medieval Catholic Church, we're talking about the Roman Catholic Church, okay? Don't get that confused with the Eastern Orthodox Church that we talked about with the Great what? Schism. Good job, Lauren. I heard you, right? The Great Schism established two other branches of the church, etc., etc., etc. All right, so anyway, well, let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. Some of this is very elementary to you, and that's fine, but we're going to extend this, and we're going to make it honor status soon enough, I promise, okay? So, really quickly, let's get started. First of all, who dat? That's the Pope. That's not even the right Pope, though. That's Pope Benedict. That's the last one. I made this presentation a long time ago, okay? So, the Pope that we have now is Pope Francis, and we all know that the Pope is the leader of the Catholic Church, right? But what's your local priest called? Good job. It's called your parish priest, right? So our parish priest here would be Father Joe, okay? Now, there were parishes of the Catholic Church all over medieval Europe. They were in the Frankish kingdom established by Clovis. They were all over Charlemagne's Holy Roman Empire. That was neither Holy nor Roman Empire. Other thing you need to write down really quick is the Papal States. The Papal States was a country that actually was headed up by the Pope himself in the middle of Italy, extending off of Rome. Okay, so write the Papal States. Okay, very, very important. Star it, circle it a bunch of times. Like I said, you're honors kids, you got to know that stuff. So that's your parish priest. Anyone not involved with the church during the Middle Ages was looked on with extreme suspicion. Now, when I say suspicion, that's an understatement, okay? When I say suspicion, I'm very, very much watering that down. You weren't allowed to not be involved in the church, right? You weren't allowed to not be involved in the church. It just wasn't an option, okay? So everyone went to church all the time. We didn't have any of these creasters, as my wife calls them, the Christmas and Easter crowd. You went every Sunday. It's what you had to do. Now, a lot of people believe, and a lot of historians believe, that this goes hand in hand with the lifestyle led during the Middle Ages, was that life was so bad during, so go to church now and end up with eternal prosperity, right? Anyway, priests are going to do a lot of things. Priests are going to provide guidance, and they're going to help the needy, and some even ran small schools. Now, typically the schools were meant for people who wanted to become a sister or a priest later on, all right? The priests were not doling out free intelligence for no reason. Saints also very, very important in the early Roman Catholic Church. Just like in confirmations, you have to pick your saint. Tons and tons of them. Like, for example, I went and saw St. Catherine when I was in Siena. I saw her head in a box. Really neat. If you got some time to look up St. Catherine head in a box in St. Catherine's Church in Siena, Italy. Okay? So, let's keep going, though. Sorry, I thought somebody was peeking in that window right there. So, the Bible also during the Middle Ages was only written in Latin. Now, there have been tons and tons of reasons why people think that this happened. I personally think that the church can retain power and retain its prevalence in society if all of the language is written in Latin, because then that makes it so the only people that can actually read it are people that are associated with the church, so your priests, your pope, your nuns, your monks. All those guys can read Latin. The common people could not read Latin. Conversational common people could not read Latin whatsoever. So, very, very important thing. Now, this is an example of the saints and their importance. So now the story of St. Patrick is a really, really good one. What I like for homework tonight included on this is actually going to be due with the assignment itself, and I'll know if you actually did your homework or not. I want you to look up the story of St. Valentine as in terms of Valentine's Day, okay? Very cool story. I'll like it a lot. But let's talk about St. Patrick really quick. So put St. Valentine somewhere in your notes, and just to remind yourself to bring in half a sheet of paper with the story of St. Valentine summarized on it. Now, St. Patrick, though, was believed to have run the snakes out of Ireland, and he became the patron saint of Ireland, right? Well, funny thing about it is the snakes are often a biblical image used to represent evil, right? For example, what tempted Eve? A snake, okay? And a lot of people believe that snakes were actually had their legs taken from them and were forced to crawl on their bellies by God themselves. Now, St. Patrick didn't actually run all the snakes out of Ireland. he converted a lot of the pagans there. And the way that he helped do that is he used the imagery of a clover, a three-leaf clover, to say the Holy Trinity is much like a three-leaf clover, three entities in one being, right? So the village church was a very, very prominent thing. Let's talk about the village church. Village life revolved around your church, right? Around your parish. Baptisms marked a person's entry into the community, and marriage and funerals were held at the church, and the dead was buried outside of them. This is a part of like the graveyards. It's all like your marriage is considered one of your sacraments. I think there's 7, right? 7 sacraments. Your baptism or your confirmation. All of these things are considered sacraments, right? Now, this is an example of a sacrament, right? This is a christening, okay? That baby looks terrified. So, the church also required a tax called a tithe. It was 1/10 of your income. And this wasn't like a loose tax. This was required for you to actually attend Mass. 1/10 of your income. So the tithe is very important. It's going to come in a lot when we talk about the corruption of monetary corruption of the church later on before the Reformation. The sacraments, though, they're sacred rituals of the medieval Catholic Church. You had to do certain things to be able to achieve salvation. They believed that the participation in the sacraments leads to salvation. One big part of these sacraments is this word that I need you to write down. It includes this right here, the Eucharist and the Holy Communion. It's called transubstantiation, okay? Transubstantiation. Transubstantiation, right? Go look it up. So transubstantiation is the idea that upon consuming the holy wine and the bread of your communion, that these parts of the Holy Communion actually turn into pieces of Christ when they go inside of your body. So that's transubstantiation. This is a very long-term held Catholic belief, okay? And a lot of this is going to come up when we talk about Reformation later on. So it's a very important word to remember, transubstantiation, okay? So anyway, Christians believe that participation in the sacraments is going to lead them to salvation. When I say salvation, I mean heaven, right? So, cathedrals, right? One other couple things before we stop soon. A cathedral is that's ran by bishops and supervised by parish churches, and they also held service. Typically built in the Gothic style, all right? Now, what we're going to do from here, I'm going to show you some cool pictures tomorrow, okay? So we're going to stop here for today, and we're going to pick up on this tomorrow. And this is a way to just help us kind of catch up a little bit by day. You'll have a flip tomorrow as well. Your flip tomorrow, though, will be on the High Middle Ages, the start of the High Middle Ages. And, for example, like a couple of things I need you to look up, like a little bit of extra honors things that you need to know. So anyway, what I want you to do, including your St. Valentine story, I want you to look up one other Gothic cathedral and just write down what it is and where it is, okay? Sound good? I hope you all have a fantastic evening, and we're going to talk about some Gothic-style churches tomorrow that aren't Notre Dame because it's a little overrated. We'll see y'all then, Camden Catholic.